What we have here is a 5-gallon bucket of honey that was harvested October 3rd. It's now January 23rd, so it's been a little bit more than 3.5 months. Let's open it up and see what we've got. Yep, just as I thought. Harder than a rock. So the question is, how do we get it from a completely crystallized form to a liquid, so we can put it in our jars and our bears? My solution is a honey bucket heater, which is simply an insulated box heated with a light bulb. It's a gadget you'll wonder how you ever did without. So join us as we learn how to make a honey bucket heater in the Beekeeper's Workshop. We are back in the Beekeeper's Workshop. Let's take a closer look at the honey bucket heater and see what we've got. The heater is basically a large insulated rectangular box with a hinged lid. There are 6 panels screwed together. Since most of what's happening is on the inside of the heater, I removed the side panel so we can take a better look. Each panel consists of a 1 1/2 inch wide frame covered on the outside by a 1/4 inch hardboard. A sheet of 3/4 inch oil-faced foam board provides insulation. On the inside of the heater, we can see that the heat is supplied by a standard light bulb in a porcelain base. The light is hooked up to a dimmer switch, so we can control the temperature inside the bucket heater by adjusting the brightness of the bulb. With a little practice, you will be able to control the temperature to within a few degrees. Over the light is an aluminum drip shield. The drip shield keeps honey and stuff from dripping on the light bulb, which would probably cause the bulb to break. And finally, there are 3 shelf supports. From time to time, we will be showing drawings to illustrate certain construction details. These drawings, including step-by-step procedures and a list of materials to build the honey bucket heater, are available for download. Details will be provided at the end of this video. So let's get started with today's project, building a honey bucket heater. We will be using 1x4s for the frame. Out of each 1x4, we can get 2 matching frame members. So our first job is to cut the 1x4s to length. We have the 1x4s cut to length. 4 at 27 inches, 4 at 22.5 inches, 2 at 18.5 inches, and 2 at 16.5 inches. Now we are ready to make the lap joints. We will be using lap joints for joining the frame members. A lap joint is easy to make with lots of glue surface, plenty strong for this job. A lap joint consists of corresponding notches cut on the ends of each frame. Each notch is 3/8 inches deep, or half the thickness of the board, and 1 1/2 inches high, which is the width of the frame. To make the lap joints, I am going to use the table saw with a tenon jig on the fence. I have marked each board to avoid cutting on the wrong side. The tenon jig keeps my pinkies safely away from the blade and keeps the board from tilting during the cut. With the jig, all the cuts will be exactly the same. I have set the fence for 3/8 of an inch from the outside of the blade to the tenon jig and raised the blade 1 1/2 inches high. Clamp the 1x4 to the tenon jig, and away we go. Rotate the board, clamp it down, and make the cut on the other end. To complete the lap joint, I'm going to make a shoulder cut right here and get rid of this top piece. It is important to keep the marked side up so that we remove the right side of the board. I have set the fence at 1.5 inches to the outside of the blade and 3/8 of an inch high. And that is how you make a lap joint. Let's take another look at our prototype for the shelf brackets. We can see that there are 3 brackets. Each bracket fits into a dado on the frame. We cut these dados in the full 1x4. It is easier that way, and the notches will exactly line up on the matching frames. On each 1x4 board that will be used for the vertical frames on the front and back panels, I have penciled in the locations for the shelf bracket dados. Each dado will be 1 1/2 inches wide and 3/8 inches deep. I have marked out the dados from the bottom at 8, 16.5, and 22.5 inches. In the radial arm saw, I am using a 1/4 inch stacked dado blade for this operation. For the shelf brackets, I have ripped a 16.5 inch 2x4 to a width of 2 1/8 inches. Then cut a 1 1/2 inch notch 3/8 inches deep on each end. These brackets will fit into the dados we have just made on the front and back frames. When assembling, we will simply glue and nail the brackets to the frame. The lap joints are complete. Now we are ready to rip the 1x4s into 1.5 inch strips, which we will need for the frames. I've set the fence 1 1/2 inches from the inside of the blade. Okay, we've turned all of the 1x4s into 1 1/2 inch frame members with a lap joint. Now we are ready for the glue up. I've got one of the frames on the bench ready for gluing. I'm using Franklin's Tight Bond glue. It's a type of carpenter's glue that can be found in any lumberyard. It's good stuff. Easy to work with. I like to use a small glue brush and get an even spread of glue on the joint. Any gaps in the glue weakens the joint. The brushes are cheap, and at the end of the job you can wash it up and use it over and over again. There. That looks good. Now we'll use a carpenter square on the outside and a rafter square on the inside to make sure the corner is square. Tack it down with a couple of 5/8 inch brads. The brads will hold the frame together until the glue has a chance to set up. Check for square. Tighten it up and nail it. Now we'll do the other end. This is where cutting accurate joints really pays off. The frame just sort of falls together. Everything squares up nicely. Makes the carpenter look good. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Make sure the joint is good and covered. Looks good. Check the square. Check it down. And we are done. There you have it. 1 down and 5 to go. As before with the lap joints, a little bit of glue goes a long way. Spread the glue with the brush. And now we put some glue on the 3 shelf brackets and spread it around. Put the brackets in place. Come on. There. Make sure the brackets are centered and nail with a couple of 1 1/4 inch brads. There. That takes care of the front panel, and we do the same thing for the back. From a sheet of 1/4 inch hardboard, I have cut pieces to the size of each of the 6 frames. Now we will glue and nail the hardboard to the frames. Insulating the panels is a snap. I've cut a piece of 3/4 inch foil face foam that will fit inside the frame. For this job I'm using construction glue. This glue is rated for foam, but since the foam board is faced with foil, any construction glue would work. If you're gluing directly to foam, be sure to use a glue rated for foam. Regular construction glue contains acetone and will dissolve the board and won't hold. Make sure the shiny side is up. Push it down, and it's done. For the front and back panels, you will have to piece around the shelf brackets when installing the foam board. Well, we have all 6 panels done and are ready for assembly. Looks like a good place to call it a day. Tomorrow we'll complete assembling the box and install the hardware, including wiring for the light bulb and dimmer switch. So join us tomorrow as we complete the honey bucket heater in the beekeeper's workshop.